guys, Crystal here from Homemaking on the Homestead, and today I am going to show you how I took just under 4 pounds of pork loin roast and turned that into enough dinners to feed us for 6 days. So it's a great frugal use of food resources. It's a good way to stretch, and if you're trying to feed, of course there's only 2 of us, so if you're just trying to feed more people than that, you might need more meat to make it stretch. I just kind of came up with these meals every day that I did a meal. I did not have a big plan, but it's great for meal prepping, and you can certainly turn it into specific meals and have the recipes, and I've really enjoyed doing this. Since I've done this the first time, I've also done this with some beef roast, and I'm getting ready to do it with hamburger right now. I like that prepping aspect of it where you just cook everything up, the meat mainly. So you just cook up all your meat and it's just waits in the refrigerator for you, and you can pull it out every day and throw all the rest of it together. It just like takes out one step, and I don't know, I've really enjoyed doing my meal prepping and meal planning this way. So I'm going to show you how I cooked it. I did it in the Instant Pot. I had 3 individual one pound roasts. I had bought a big pork loin roast from Costco, and this was quite a while ago, and when I did some freezer clean out with chest freezers, things kind of filtered to the bottom, and I found what I had left of that, and I thought I need to use this right away. So that was part of my motivation for let's just cook it up and use it. And so when I cooked it, it was a little bit frozen, and I'll show you how I did that. Anyway, I hope that you find this video to be very helpful and inspire you to utilize your resources and stretch out that food budget, making time in the kitchen better and being frugal with the use of your food. All right, let's get cooking. To begin with, I took my 3 individual pork roasts that were a little over a pound each, and I put them in my Instant Pot. They were partially frozen. I had a little bit of chicken broth left in the refrigerator, and I added a little bit of salt. Put them on there, and I cooked them for about 30 minutes just to get them completely defrosted. When the time was up and I had let them cool for just a few minutes, I opened it up and looked to see if they were defrosted, and they were. And at that point, I went ahead and just kind of cut them into smaller pieces so that they would cook faster and be a lot more tender. I put the lid back on and cooked them for another 30 minutes. And at that point, everything was cooked well, and I had lots of juices from that. I pulled the meat out, and I had just a little tray, and I put all the meat into the tray. Then I took the broth because I wanted to save that, and I strained out the rest of the meat and added that to what I had in my little tray. And then I poured all that broth into a canning jar and put that in the refrigerator to use for a meal. That night, we were having a leftovers buffet, and I had some leftovers, and I just wanted to add a little bit more to it. So I added some barbecue sauce to this pork. And then I took some foil and covered up the pan and stuck the rest of that meat into the refrigerator. Then I pulled out my leftovers. I had a leftover sheet pan dinner that I divided between the 2 of us. I also had a little bit of pumpkin chili left over, and so I just divided that into 2 little bowls. And then I put some of this barbecued pork on the plate and pretty much used what I had there. And I had some salad already in the refrigerator, so I divided that up and added a few chips for us to have while we enjoyed that meal. And it was very good, and it turned out really good. My husband really enjoyed the barbecued pork. And because he enjoyed it so much, the next day I went ahead and did the same thing with the barbecued pork, pulled my meat out of the refrigerator, Dished up some into a bowl. Then I sliced up some lettuce and a little bit of onion that I had in the refrigerator. Added barbecue sauce to the pork that I had pulled out. And then it was time to make the sandwiches. I put the buns on a tray and put them under the broiler. I added the barbecued pork to one side, topped it with a little cheese, and put that back under the broiler for the cheese to melt. I put some mayonnaise on the top side. And once that was done, added a little more barbecue sauce and then topped it with the onions and the lettuce. These turned out so good. My husband was just in love with them. So we had them a second night. The next day, it was time to pull out my pork again, and now the broth that I had saved. I kind of removed all the fat that had accumulated at the top. I set all that aside and got ready to make some rice. Now, I like to bake my rice, and so basically it's twice as much water as rice. And I just put it in a pan, add a little salt, cover it with foil, and I bake that in the oven. It's brown rice, so I bake it in the oven for about an hour. If it was white rice, I would do it for about 25 minutes. Then I got busy on my gravy. I chopped up some onion, I chopped up a little bit of green pepper. I added about 2 tablespoons of butter to my pan, and I added about 1/4 of a cup of olive oil as well. And I put those vegetables in there and just stirred those around and let them cook until they got nice and soft. At that point, I added 1/3 cup of flour and mixed that in there and let that cook for a few minutes until everything was smooth, and gives it a second, minute, whatever, for the flour taste to kind of cook out. I didn't quite have 3 cups of broth, so I added water to make it an even 3 cups. That was my goal for the gravy amount. I stirred that in, and I brought that to a boil, added some salt and garlic, and let that simmer until the gravy was nice and thick. Once the gravy had thickened up nicely, I added the pork that I had pulled out and stirred that around and let that heat up until it was nice and hot and heated through. Then my rice was done, and it was time to serve dinner. I have to say, this turned out really well. I really enjoyed this. Of course, I like anything gravy, so maybe that's why. But I also had roasted some vegetables while the rice was cooking, and so I served that with some roasted veggies. Then it was time to finish up the pork, and I still had some rice left, and so I decided to make pork fried rice. I chopped up all my pork into smaller pieces, pulled out some vegetables from my refrigerator, and I chopped up those in my large 12-inch cast iron frying pan. I put a little oil, and I put my vegetables in there, and I let those cook until everything was nice and soft. I then added a little bit of frozen peas and carrots that I had a bit in an open bag in the freezer. And at that point, it was time to cook my eggs. I kind of pushed my veggies aside, melted some butter. I put in 4 eggs. And I just kind of let those cook until they had basically all cooked up and scrambled. At that point, I just mixed everything together, all the vegetables and all the eggs. And then I added in my pork. I stirred that up and let that all heat through. At that point, I wanted to do some soy sauce. You really have to add this according to your own taste. There is no specific measurements. So add it, taste it. It's easier to add more than to take it away if you put too much in. Then I dumped in the last of the rice. Mixed that all. I tasted it and felt like it needed just a little bit more, and I added a little bit of sesame oil there. And then it was time to dish it up. We definitely enjoyed this, and we had enough to eat for 2 nights. Okay guys, I hope that you found this video to be helpful, and like I said at the beginning, I hope you found it to be inspiring, and maybe just a different take on doing some meal planning and meal prepping, and being frugal with the resources that you have on hand. All right everybody, I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.